Practically every day from people, I hear that Tesla is never going to solve full self-driving, and therefore its impact on Tesla stock and Tesla owners is practically negligible. But as Tesla's 2022 impact report shows, these autonomous features are already having a huge impact on both us drivers and Tesla's bottom line. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I'm going to start at the beginning of this section, which is on page 72 in the report. It's a 224-page report. I will leave a link to it in the description so you can check it all out if you want to. But I'm going to kind of skip through the earlier parts and I'm going to get to the autonomy features because that's what I really want to talk about today. But anyway, the first one we see Lars over here, from the video where he was talking about how Tesla is engineered differently. And I'll actually leave a link to that video in the description as well. It's a really, really good video if you haven't watched it. They've tested their vehicles in the United States, in Europe, in Australia, etc., etc. And so you can see that they have 5 stars and best in class in many of these things. But also over here in the CIASI ratings, they have occupant safety, active safety, occupant safety, pedestrian safety, and active safety. So you can see the Model 3 and Model Y in particular, and I don't know if they tested the Model S and the Model X. But anyway, these are not just passively safe for the occupant of the vehicle, they're also safe for people around them. And that is already a huge impact that Tesla is having on the external world. If there's a chance for an impact with a vulnerable road user like a pedestrian, Teslas are more likely to avoid those accidents, and even if they do get into those accidents, they're less likely to hurt those people. So this is already a huge effect on not only Tesla owners, but everybody around them as well. And then here you can see the Model Y and Model S both get 92% on Euro NCAP, so excellent score, 3% higher than the second highest manufacturers. And then we move into the active safety features, which is what I want to focus on here today. So to differentiate this, passive safety features are things like the design of the car, crumple zones, etc. Things that passively are just built into the vehicle that keep you safer. Active safety features are things that are actively, as opposed to passively, going about trying to keep the occupant of the vehicle and the people surrounding them safer. And before I even get into this, a personal anecdote from yesterday. I was driving on what's called the Loop here, which is a highway that goes around Athens. The speed limit is about 65. It was pouring down rain, and a whole bunch of people stopped very, very short in front of me. And two cars in front of me stopped very short, and the car in front of me slammed into the back of that car. Accident, made a bad day. I don't think anybody was seriously injured. I was already going at a speed where I just kind of went around it, and there was so much other traffic, and there was so much rain that it would have been very difficult for me to stop and get out and check. But it looked like more or less of a fender bender. It wasn't that bad of a collision, but the problem was that it was a collision, and so both cars are damaged and you have bad days for all the people involved. In the meantime, the Tesla Model Y that I was driving on full self-driving immediately slowed down and got over into the right-hand lane to get out of that. So that would be an active safety feature that keeps, maybe I was just not paying attention or something. I was paying attention, it was raining. I was paying a lot of attention to what was going on, but just saying, if I was a human that was looking out the window or looking at my phone or something at that moment, that would have saved me from potentially getting into that accident as well. So that's exactly what active safety features are built to do. They're built to avoid the accident first, and then if you have the accident, to minimize the amount of potential for injury. So let's read over some of this report. The range of sensors, compute power, and quality of software in automatic emergency braking, or AEB systems, can vary dramatically across all vehicle makes and models. So don't just think when you buy a car that says it has automatic emergency braking that is necessarily equal to everybody else's car. That's basically what they're saying here. Our active safety features are powered by 8 cameras, a neural net computer, and learnings from our fleet of over 4 million cars. Built on a deep neural network, Tesla Vision deconstructs the vehicle's environment at greater levels of reliability than classical vision processing techniques can. And if you want to take a look at this in more depth, I have a whole playlist devoted just to this, so check that out if you're interested. Continuing on, Model Y is our latest vehicle to earn a 5-star safety rating from the European New Car Assessment Program, or Euro NCAP. As part of this assessment, Model Y received the highest overall score among any vehicle tested under Euro NCAP. Model S and Model Y both received the highest overall safety scores among every vehicle tested by Euro NCAP in 2022. And so you can see over here that Tesla Model Y and Model S US scored 98% for the safety assist rating, and the best other score was the NIO ET7, which was a 95, and then it went down from there. So again, these scores are great for everybody. It's amazing that cars are as safe as they are right now, but qualitatively, you're looking at Teslas being statistically significantly safer than anything else you can drive out there. And then we move on to safety is enhanced when autopilot is engaged. Notice down at the bottom little star based on our data of Tesla vehicles and NHTSA data of vehicles. So this is a combination of what Tesla's fleet has learned on its own and NHTSA, which of course is only in the United States and maybe in Canada as well. I don't remember if they operate there, but at any rate, it's a localized area just for the US and Canada at the greatest. But Tesla, of course, has information for their global fleet as well. And the figure that they've got from that is that the total US vehicle fleet average is 1.53 accidents per million miles. So in other words, if you drive a car for 1.53 million miles without any safety assist features, driving whatever kind of car it is, you get close to 100% likelihood that you are going to have an accident. Now, of course, I know that's statistical likelihood and not, some people are just safer drivers and they're much less likely to get involved in an accident, but things happen. So anyway, that's the baseline, 1.53 accidents per million miles of driving. If you then turn to Tesla vehicles with no active safety features on, in other words, you're driving it without traffic-aware cruise control, whatever, you're pressing the accelerator, you're pressing the brakes, you can see that it's basically half, a little bit less than half of what the fleet average is, or 0.68 accidents per million miles, which means you would have to drive over a million miles in order to have that 100% chance of having an accident. Now, why is this the case? You could say it's a better class of driver. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to make that argument. But what I mean by that is not that they're better people, but that you have a tendency for people to be driving newer Teslas. So they're newer vehicles, which means that you have people who have paid more money for those vehicles and therefore probably care more about not getting them in accidents than people who might be driving older, more beat up vehicles. Also, the vehicle is in better shape. But I think much more important to this statistic is the fact that these cars, even if you're driving them without active safety features enabled, they still do have a lot of that stuff. If you start to go out of a lane when you're driving by yourself, the car will autocorrect and put you back in that lane. It will emergency brake if you come up too close upon somebody else. So even if you're driving it with nothing else engaged, the car will still actively try to save you from getting into an accident. So I think that's the primary reason. There could be a secondary reason, which is that people have spent more money and these cars are newer and therefore people are a little more conservative with the car in general. And then here's the really remarkable thing. This is full self-driving beta engaged, which is mostly non-highway miles. So what we're talking about here is, remember that until version 11 of the software came out, full self-driving beta only operated on city streets, which means that until recently you were looking at only city street traffic. And that's where most accidents happen. It's not where the most serious accidents happen, of course, because the higher speeds generate much more serious accidents. But accidents are much more likely to happen in city environments, right? Where people are turning, lights are changing, stop signs, crazy traffic, all of that kind of stuff. And you can see with full self-driving beta engaged, it's again half as much as it was with Tesla vehicles with no active safety involved. And this is an absolutely remarkable statistic here. And for people who are arguing that full self-driving beta doesn't do anything and it's useless and they'll never solve full autonomy, and why would you pay for this feature, blah, 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 blah. This is why you'd pay for it. If nothing else, it is a safety feature that makes you less than half as likely to get involved in an accident as somebody who's just driving the exact same car around themselves. The computer is safer than the human, at least in combination with the human. And I know full self-driving beta, you're still responsible for the vehicle, so you're monitoring it. But the human plus computer at this point is over twice as safe as just the human by itself. And that is an amazing statistic, and it's something that everybody needs to plant in their brains. This is only going to get better. Remember, now that we have version 11 of the software, that means that more and more miles are going to be driven on highways. And as we'll see with the next statistic, you are much less likely to get involved in an accident on the highway. So this number is only going to drop in 2023. And speaking of that, with autopilot engaged, which is mostly highway miles, it's 0.18 accidents per million miles, or you'd have to drive somewhere around 5 million miles of driving in order to have that 100% chance of having an accident. That is a lot of miles, folks. I don't know exactly how many miles I've driven in my life, but I don't even think it's 1 million miles, much less 5 million miles. So the average human being is probably never going to drive 5 million miles in their lifetime. And so that means if you're driving on a highway with autopilot engaged, there is almost almost no chance of getting in an accident. It's just a remarkably small number. And again, remember the full self-driving beta right now, those miles are almost entirely city miles in 2022 and previously, whereas the other ones are highway miles. So as version 11 comes out in 2023 and we get more miles with version 11, which are less accident prone, you're going to see this number drop, and you're going to see full self-driving beta engaged numbers probably come down into like 0.2, 0.25 range next year. Of course, that number is just my speculation. I don't have any evidence. I don't have a time machine, and I can't go forward into the future. But anyway, if people tell you that full self-driving beta is a useless thing, they're never going to solve autonomy, and therefore, why do you give any value to TSLA or the stock share of Tesla? Why do you give any value to full self-driving beta? This is exactly why. You have a safety feature which is profoundly important in how it affects. Look at this. This is 5 times less likely to get into an accident than the total US vehicle fleet. 5 times less likely. That is worth paying quite a bit of money for on its own right. So even if Tesla never actually solved full self-driving completely, this on its own is worth quite a bit of money, both for the consumer buying the car, but also for Tesla share prices. I'm going to move through this part a little bit quicker, but you can see that the safety score beta incentivizes safe driving. That is absolutely the case. So basically, if you want to get Tesla insurance, they grade your driving performance. And people who have Tesla insurance, of course, are very motivated to get a high grade above 90 or something like that. And in so doing, they reduce the amount of collisions. You can see over here, this graph on the right shows they unfortunately don't really have like a numerical thing on the x-axis here, but you can see that 90 to 100 safety score has way lower collision rate, at least half of what the 0 to 60 amount is. So people are motivated to drive more safely to get a higher score, to get lower insurance rates, and in the meantime, they are much less likely to get involved in an accident. On to more active safety features, automatic emergency braking continues to improve. And remember, this is standard on every Tesla. This is not anything you have to engage or anything like that. Thanks to Tesla Vision, our 8-camera vision-only system, each of our vehicles can recognize and react to encroaching vehicles far outside the field of view of traditional sensors. So traditional sensors in a car are probably radar sensors, and they probably point only forward, at least in our Mazda that we just sold. That was the case. So you had to be directly behind something, and it had to be fairly large. A human being generally was not large enough to set this thing off. So another car would work, but not a human being or a bicycle or something like that. Anyway, these developments have been validated through extensive testing and millions of fleet miles through the use of shadow mode. In other words, as a human is driving, the computer is making predictions and it's saying, I would brake right now. And so you can do that, and the car won't actually do the braking while it's in shadow mode, but it would predict whether it should brake or not. And you can train up the fleet to get really good at the decision about when it should brake and how violently it should brake as well. Automatic emergency braking is a loud warning, and believe me, it is very loud, and a quick brake that occurs if our vehicles detect they are on an imminent collision course and the driver has not yet intervened. And here you can see some use cases: turning into the path of a pedestrian crossing the road, that can definitely happen, turning into the path of an oncoming vehicle, traveling towards a vehicle on a perpendicular path. So in any of those cases, the car can emergency brake on its own, even if the human driver doesn't tell it to brake at that point. And that's a huge safety feature and will remove a ton of those fender bender type accidents. And even more importantly, in some cases, like with a pedestrian, you could remove the chance of injuring a pedestrian by hitting them. And that is, that doesn't just make it a bad day for somebody who gets hit by a car, that could kill them or, critically injure them or something. So it can make for a very bad life as well. So these are hugely important features, not just for the driver, but for the people around them as well. And here's something I did not know before: superior nighttime safety. In 2021, US pedestrian and road user fatalities reached their highest rate, a 53% increase since 2012, and over 75% of fatalities occur at night. I did not know that, but that makes perfect sense. You're wearing dark clothing or something, and you're on the side of the road, and you step out just as the car goes by. It's very difficult to see people a lot of times at night. I'm sure you've had that experience where you're like, whoa, there's a person there, or a deer or anything else like that. So anyway, that's the kind of situation. I did not realize it was 75% 5% of fatalities, but that is a huge percentage. So if you can see better at night, in other words, if the car can see better at night than a human, that's a huge advantage you have. Model S, 3, X, and Y are Euro NCAP 5-star rated, including for nighttime pedestrian crash avoidance. Model 3 and Model Y have also both received Superior, the highest possible rating from IIHS, for the nighttime performance of our pedestrian AEB system. So if you're a pedestrian out on the road at night, you're probably going to be much happier if a Tesla is coming up behind you than any other car, pretty much. Next up, of course, is data. We are using real-world data from our fleet to design our safety systems. And if we move down to the next one, we can learn from any crash. Whether simulated or real, we can learn from any crash to help optimize the protection of occupants and reduce the likelihood of injury. And I believe that's not just to the occupants of the car, but in some cases it's to the people around them. In this case, I think they're talking specifically about the occupants of the car. This fundamental philosophy, in other words, learning from every crash, is one of the reasons our vehicles perform at industry-leading levels in regulatory and consumer crash tests globally. As all of our vehicles are connected, we can further leverage this philosophy by deploying new safety capabilities and improvements over the air as software updates. So again, just consider this for a moment. This is not a car like any other car pretty much that you buy. You get that car and that's the car you get for the whole time you own it, unless there's like a recall and they have to fix something or whatever. But for the most part, that car, the software, the brains of that car are what it is forever. Our Model Y that we purchased in December of 2020 has had major upgrades since then, and it is a safer car now than it was in 2020 when we bought it. You can't say that about just about any other vehicle. In other words, every time anything bad happens with a Tesla vehicle, they learn from it and they implement that in a software update, and we get that for free. That's just a bonus of being a Tesla owner. And this graph is really, really interesting. So they don't show this year, but in the 2021 impact report, they showed where NHTSA actually does the tests, and they only test in a few places. They test kind of like frontal, to the left, to the back, to the rear. Anyway, it's only a few places, but this is all of their data, with the red being like more and more accidents happening there. So there's a lot of accidents that happen frontally at low speeds. I believe that the further away from the center line it gets, the faster the car is going. So these very, very high speeds, of course, would be very, very serious accidents, but they are not nearly as often as these low speed accidents. So you can see that the heat map shows that in the middle part, like right in front of the car and right behind the car, those are the places where you have these low speed fender bender type accidents, and they can learn a lot because there is a ton of data stored in each accident. Remember that Tesla can upload all of that information and find out information about what happened 30 or 40 seconds before the accident occurred, and then what happened exactly during the accident, and then the aftermath of the accident. So they can collect all of this data, and then they can put this into their safety training protocols and maybe neural networks and things like that. And they can update the car's software so that it will avoid those accidents more likely, or if it gets stuck in that accident, it behaves in a more safe manner than it used to. And remember, we get that all on a timely basis for free. We don't have to pay anything extra to get these updates all the time. Then they talk about using injury studies and integrated detection front studies to improve crash safety as well. Injury studies. We leverage our ever-growing data set to help ensure occupants receive the best possible restraints, such as seatbelts and airbags, for the impact they are involved in, and design innovative restraint systems for the future. Our safety analysis engineers evaluate through simulation studies to enhance our understanding of the complex impacts that occur in the field. The study of injuries has been accelerated by the creation of automated data pipelines and by leveraging machine learning to analyze larger data sets. As the capability of driver assistance advances, the nature of the crash exposure to our fleet will change. So in short, what this means is that they can redesign the car overall, like the crumple zones and the way that the car reacts to a crash, but on a more interactive basis. Of course, you have to buy a new car for that. But on a more interactive basis, what they can do is they can change the seatbelt pre-tensioning and how tensioned it is. They can also detect where you are in the vehicle by your weight and your weight distribution. And they can use that information to deploy airbags at various timings and with various amounts of force. So rather than just going boom and exploding the airbag at maximum force, they can actually do it in a much more controlled manner in order to not injure you from the airbag. So if you're having a fairly violent collision and the car knows this, it actually can detect this through the vision system prior to the collision itself and begin deploying the airbag and pre-tensioning the seatbelt so that it doesn't have to do it in more of an emergent type of situation a few microseconds or milliseconds later. So every millisecond that it has to prepare for these crashes, it can do things in a more safe manner than it could otherwise. So this again is a huge feature that the occupants get from their active safety features, and they're leveraging all of their machine learning and auto labeling capabilities in order to make this happen for the consumer. And then we get to integrated detection fronts, or IDFs. IDFs can help us understand the nature of an impact before first contact even occurs in the crash, like I was saying. The IDF system is continuously watching for the potential threat of a frontal impact to our vehicles and acts as an early warning to further enhance our crash sensing system. When an imminent frontal impact is detected by our vision system, IDF results in faster and improved restraint decision making, e.g. early seatbelt pre-tensioning where needed. In turn, the new enriched data set from the IDF can provide a positive feedback loop of safety analysis. So just what I was talking about before, sorry, I preempted this card. But anyway, the basic idea here is it can see that a crash is about to happen before it happens, and it can take steps to make the occupants of the vehicle as safe as possible. And like I was saying previously, it was deployed to the fleet in an over-the-air update. This is nothing you had to pay for. Nothing you really even had to deal with. It just automatically at 2 a.m., in the morning, just put that on your car, and now your car was substantially safer than it used to be. And finally today, moving to Tesla Vision increases performance. In 2021, we decided to remove radar from our sensor suite. This improved safety while simultaneously simplifying engineering by removing a noisy signal. Model 3 scored better in both pedestrian, including nighttime tests, and urban crash avoidance scenarios under the Euro NCAP protocols with Tesla Vision only. Now, as you probably know, it was hugely controversial that Tesla removed radar from their systems back in 2021, and the likelihood is that they're going to install high-definition radar into Hardware 4-enabled systems in the future. But anyway, what they're trying to get across here is that Tesla Vision is actually a better system than the old system with radar. And what they talk about is the noisy signal. The problem with radar, low-definition radar, is it's extremely noisy and extremely vague. It just shows that there's something in front of you. And if you have the rear end of a truck or a car in front of you that's big and it's moving relatively the same speed as you, that actually it returns a good signal, and it's very good at those sorts of situations. What it's bad at is something skinny like a person or a bridge above the road or things sticking out into the road that are stationary, stuff like that. Those create noisy signals that conflict with the vision signal. And as Andrej Karpathy talked about, I think 2 years ago, and I'll leave a reference to that up here, those situations are actually treated better by vision-only systems than with having radar in there. So anyway, Tesla had to make sure that they got a dig in there showing that it actually works better with a vision-only system than with the radar. And then just to mention this, leading the industry in fire safety, this isn't really an active thing, although it is kind of active because the battery management system, of course, has something to do with that. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that because people always talk about how BEVs catch fire and everything. Tesla leads the industry in fire safety. Way, way, way less of a chance that an electric vehicle, at least a Tesla, is going to catch fire versus an internal combustion engine vehicle. All right, so that was an awful lot to cover. The big takeaway from this is whether or not you have full self-driving, if you do, you should definitely use it as much as possible because obviously you have less of a chance of getting in an accident if you're using full self-driving beta correctly than if you're driving on your own. And you certainly are safer in a Tesla than in the general fleet of vehicles out there in the world. But the other part of this is even if you just purchase like our Model 3 that we bought, we didn't get full self-driving, but all of the features that are in the Tesla Model 3 by default make this car like a world leading. It is one of the safest vehicles aside from other Teslas in the entire world, and it's actively safe. And if we get into an accident, I know my family is cared for. Like the chance of injury is minimal in this vehicle. So that makes me feel much better that my family, not just me, but my family is driving around in the safest car available. And not only that, but every time an over-the-air update comes out, the car gets safer and safer and safer. And that is something that nobody else can say at this point. Nobody else is doing this kind of a thing. So if people say that full self-driving will never happen, autonomy will never happen, and so why are you paying the money for that? Tesla stock shouldn't be overvalued. You can say it's already having an impact. It's already making the world a safer place. And every time there's an over-the-air update, even if you don't have full self-driving, you're still getting a benefit of that data in your regular Tesla. So your Tesla keeps getting safer and safer and safer every time you get an update. So first of all, there is no competition to Tesla in this space. And second, if you're looking at a new vehicle in the price range of a Tesla, you need to buy a Tesla. It's the safest vehicle. How can you put yourself or your family through the situation where they could be injured or even killed because the car wasn't as safe as the Tesla was? At least for me and my family, that was a major reason why we bought our second Tesla. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it, and of course consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. And if you have stories about Tesla safety, anecdotes, or anything like that, let me know in the comments. And also, if you've been using AG1 from Athletic Greens, also let me know in the comments. I will be doing another promoted video from them. I would love to know your feedback about your experience. Mine has been very positive. So definitely let me know in the comments about that as well if you've had a good experience with them. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon and to my YouTube channel members. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly do appreciate it. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.